There we go. Just take that window off. Anything in the background I need to take off. There we go. There we go. All right. Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug, as always. I hope you guys are having a great Feast of Trumpets. All of us here from the Wicked by Yahuwah Assembly just want to be basically want to say, happy Yom Taruah. Oh, all of our brothers and sisters are having a great one out there, whether you're keeping it tonight. I know some are waiting for the sighting. They might be keeping it tomorrow at sunset. I know some have already kept it yesterday. Those that are not on the sliver, on the conjunction, you guys would have kept that last night into tonight. So I hope everyone is having a great new month and Yom Teruah. So we're going to be doing kind of like a continuation of what we started last week. Last week was kind of like the prep. You could say the prep study is what we did last week. Tonight is officially Yom Teruah for most of us in this group. So we're actually keeping the feast tonight. So we'll be going through some scriptures that we didn't get to go through last week. So one of those will be the chapter in the book of Yahusha, aka Joshua, where, the famous chapter where Yahuwah tells them to blow the trumpets and the wall of Jericho goes down. So we're going to be reading about that. So let me just find the exact chapter. Mom, do you remember it's chapter 6 or 7?
It's chapter 5 going into chapter 6.
Okay.
Beginning at verse 13.
Okay.
Chapter 5, verse 13.
All right. So let's see here. Let me just hold on a second. Let me just see. I know I would have. Do I have any of? Okay, so I don't have my Bible apps installed yet. So what I'll just do physical scriptures for you guys. I'll be reading from my Brenton Septuagint here to start us off. This is the Tom Horns Researcher's Library Ancient Texts, Volume 3, the Brenton Septuagint. So I'll be reading from this for you guys. So, Mom, you said Joshua 5, chapter what? Chapter 5, verse what?
13.
13. Okay, so 5:13. Okay, so Joshua chapter 5, verse 13. Just turning the page here. Bear with me, guys. All right. This will be a little bit of a review for us. We've been going through the book of Yahusha here. So here we go. I'll take my little gel pen to underline here. Okay, so. And it came to pass when Yahusha was in Jericho that he looked up with his eyes and saw a man standing before him. There was a drawn sword in his hand, and Yahusha drew near and said to him, "Are you for us or on the side of our enemies?" And he said to him, "I am now come, the chief captain of the army of Yahuwah." Now, it's very interesting. This guy says to Yahusha, son of Nun, he doesn't really give him an answer in the Septuagint. He kind of goes over his question, kind of ignores it, and says, I'm the chief. I'm the archon, is the word in the Greek there. I'm the archon leader of the whole army, which, by the way, FYI for those listening, that would mean that he's in charge of Michael, Gabriel, all of them. Mm-hmm. Okay. So he can't be Michael. All right. And Yahusha fell on his face upon the earth and said to him, "Master, what do you command your servant?" And the captain the chief captain of Yahuwah's army said to Yahusha, loose your shoe off your foot, for the place where you stand is set apart. Now, the importance here is, okay, right? There's only 2 times in scripture that phrase is given, right?
Yeah.
What is the other time? The other time is Exodus, right? Who's the one that said it in Exodus? Yahusha is the one that told Moshe in Exodus, take your sandal off your foot. Mm-hmm. So it would be safe to assume that this is what in Christianity they would call one of the first times post the first 5 books that we see a pre-incarnate Messiah talking to Yahusha, son of Nun. So this is Yahusha HaMashiach before he became a human. So that's what pre-incarnate means. I know I had to explain to some little troll on the comment section, some little Gnostic troll last time, oh, reincarnation and incarnation are the same thing. No, they're not. No, they're not. Look on Wikipedia. No, they're not. Incarnation is the idea, just for those out there, I'm not trying to be facetious here, but for those out there that are misunderstanding the difference between the two, incarnation is a biblical concept of the creator taking on human form. That's all it means. Incarnation is that. Reincarnation is that you don't believe you ever die. Okay? You can't mess the two together. It's 2 different terms, okay? And 2 different definitions. So incarnation is a term that Christianity gave the basic biblical doctrine of who Yahusha in his human ministry was. He was the Almighty in human form. That's essentially what incarnation is. It's the idea that basically he is the Almighty incarnate. He is Yahuwah in flesh. So that's where that term comes from. It's a very old Christian term. Not many people use it today, but you can. The last video we did, one of the videos we did, I think it was Yahuwah Alua, Yahuwah Elohim equals the word of Yahuwah. That's where I talked about that in the study, and I put it in the comments section, a link to the definition of that word incarnate or incarnation. It's not the same thing as reincarnation. I understand the spelling is almost identical. I get why people get confused, but 2 different terms, 2 completely different concepts. Obviously, reincarnation is not biblical. Incarnation is the idea that a deity could become a human, which obviously we see in scripture Yahuwah becoming a man in Yahusha Messiah. That's what Yahusha HaMashiach was. He was the Almighty in human form. So, anyway, so I just wanted to explain that because I know people get confused just because the spelling between the 2 words are almost the same thing. In definition, they're 2 completely different words that are not related whatsoever. So anyway, just wanted to explain that so people don't get confused. But anyway, going back to this end of the chapter here, this is what chapter 5 of Joshua is referring to. It's referring to the same entity that Moshe talked to in the flaming fire, the flaming bush. So that is the same exact person that's talking to Yahusha, son of Nun here. Now, the Masoretic will say to you that he said nay, but the Septuagint doesn't even, it's like Yahusha didn't even give him a response or feel the need to give him a response. So that to me is kind of interesting there. Also, I think the Masoretic there does not include the word chief. I think the Masoretic will just say, I'm the captain. So it kind of generalizes it like, oh, I'm just a captain. Where the Greek has the word archon attached to it. Now, if you know, the word archon is where we get archangel from. Archon. Basically means like he's the head of everything. He's not just a commander. He's the head commander. Commander-in-chief, chief commander of the army of Yahuwah. So it it's almost like the Masoretic, by taking that little word out, they're trying to generalize who this person is. Because we see in the Brit Hadashah everywhere, he talks about, Yahusha is preeminent over creation, right? In Colossians 1, that he would have preeminence. He would be first of all, or head of all, so on and so forth. So, but anyway, so that kind of caught out to me there. So, chapter 6, let's see here. Now Jericho was closely shut up because and besieged, and none went out of it, and none came in. And Yahuwah said to Yahusha, behold, I deliver Jericho into your power. Why is this important here? Because Yahuwah is saying he's doing it. Yahuwah a lot of times would tell the Israelites, guess what? Yeah, it's not on your own power you're doing this. It's not, Mom, if you need to, you can have that on low.
I don't need it.
Are you sure? Because I'm way far away on the other side of the room. It won't bother the noise.
No,
okay.
I'm fine.
All right. Okay. All right. And the king and its king in it. Okay. Its mighty men. And do you set the men of war round about it? And it shall be when you shall sound with the trumpet, all the people shall shout together. It's one of the reasons I really like the Septuagint. Most of them here will have trumpet translated instead of ram's horn or whatever. Some modern translations, they try to translate shofar as ram's horn and all that. So I like how the Brenton keeps it as trumpet here. So, and all the people shall shout together, and when you shall have shouted, so they're going to shout together, and when they have shouted, the walls of the city shall fall of themselves, and all the people shall enter, each one rushing direct into the city. Now, the interesting spiritual connection so far we could see here in chapter 6 of Joshua is that the shouting of the Israelites accompanied along with the actual physical sound of the trumpets, like both of those sounds together are causing the wall to fall, which is kind of interesting. So Yahuwah is telling them to do this, even though Yahuwah is the one doing it. He's having them shout with their voices along with the sound of the trumpet. So it's kind of that. And by the way, that's kind of what you get from the Hebrew word taruah. If you were to look in the Strongs, that's what it means. It means to shout. So very interesting. And I think in the Septuagint, the Greek equivalent to that is not just shouting, but shouting with trumpets, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so, and Yahusha, son of Nun, went into the priests and spoke to them, saying, let 7 priests having 7 set apart trumpets proceed thus before Yahuwah. Let them sound loudly, and let the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah follow. So remember, guys, how I was saying last week how there's specific duties that they had to give the Levites to do with the trumpets. This is one of them. When they would carry the ark of the covenant, they would have the priests in front blowing with trumpets. So this is what he's talking about here. Charge the people to go around and surround the city. Let your men of war pass on armed before Yahuwah. And let the men of war proceed before. And the priests bring up the rear behind the Ark of the Covenant of Yahuwah, sounding the trumpets. So we're at verse 10 here. And Yahusha commanded the people, saying, cry not out, nor let anyone hear your voice, until he himself declare to you the time to cry out, and then you shall cry out. Now, interesting to note that sometimes when Yahusha's name is Yahushua, it's only done this in the Masoretic for the reason they're claiming the reason is that sometimes Yahusha, son of Nun, would cry out to Yahuwah, like asking Yahuwah to deliver them. So it's interesting to note that Shua in the Masoretic Hebrew means to cry out. So just interesting. Just from what I remember from blueletterbible.org, just interesting. So, and the Ark of the Covenant of Alua, having gone round immediately, returned into the camp and lodged there. Okay. And on the second day, Yahusha rose up in the morning, and the priests took up the Ark of the Covenant of Yahuwah, and the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets went on before Yahuwah. And afterwards, the men of war went on. And the remainder of the multitude went after the Ark of the Covenant of Yahuwah. And the priests sounded with the trumpets, and all the rest of the multitude surrounded the city 6 times. From within a short distance, and went back again into the camp. This they did 6 days. Interesting. And on the 7th day, they rose up early and surrounded the city on that day 7 times. Now, I'm not trying to make a huge deal about this because I don't believe in practicing numerology. I want to make that disclaimer right now. But there are times where numbers have a spiritual significance in Yahuwah's word. On the surface, there's a spiritual meaning to certain numbers, like 7, number of completion spiritually. The fact that they're circling the walls of Jericho six times, 6 days in a row. Then on the 7th day would be the day that I believe they're supposed to blow the trumpet. So just interesting. And there's supposed to be 7 trumpets in this chapter that are being blown by the priests. Yahusha is our high priest. He's connected to the Levites in that way. He also, prophetically speaking, the 7th day is the millennial year. Okay. 7,000 years from creation, so on and so forth. So there's definitely purposes for the number 7 in scripture. And what I'm talking about is nothing like numerology. So I know a lot of people get confused between the two. So there's a huge difference. Anyway, and it came to pass at the 7th circuit, the priests blew the trumpets, and Yahusha said to the children of Yashrael, shout, for Yahuwah has given you the city. And the city shall be devoted, it and all the things that are in it, to Yahuwah Sabaoth. That's an important compound name. I'm going to talk about that after the chapter's over. Yahuwah of armies is an important an important compound name you should pay attention to. That they are being devoted, everything in it, all these things are being devoted to Yahuwah of armies. Only do you save Rahab the harlot and all the things in her house, but keep yourself strictly from the accursed thing, lest you set your mind upon the take of the accursed thing, and you make the camp of the children of the accursed thing, and and you make the camp of the children of Yasharal and accursed thing and destroy us. So basically it's saying what's under the ban, leave it there. Whatever's under the ban, you're not allowed to take. But it seems like they are taking certain possessions, possibly the gold, silver. They are devoting. And the city shall be devoted. Okay. And everything in it. So I guess all the possessions they have, the city itself shall be devoted to Yahuwah Sabaoth. Okay. And all the silver, gold, brass, iron shall be kadash to Yahuwah. It shall be carried into the treasury of Yahuwah. And the priests should be sounded with the trumpets, and when the people heard the trumpets. All the people shouted at once with a loud, strong shout, and all the wall fell round about, and all the people went up into the city. Yahusha devoted it to destruction, and all the things that were in the city. Man and woman, young man and old, and calf and donkey, with the edge of the sword. And Yahusha said to the two young men who had acted as spies, go into the house of the woman and bring her out there, and all that she has. So all that belonged to her. Okay. And the two young men who had spied out the city entered into the house. Okay. Okay. My bad. Turned too many pages here. Yeah. Okay. Of the woman, and brought out Rahab the harlot and her father and her mother and her brothers and her kindred, all that she had, and they set her without the camp of Yasharal. And the city was burnt with fire with all things that were in it. Only of the silver, the gold, and the brass, and the iron they gave it to be brought into the treasury of Yahuwah. And Yahusha saved alive Rahab the harlot and all the house of her father, and caused her to dwell in Yasharal until this day, because she hid the spies which Yahusha sent to spy out Jericho. And Yahusha commanded on that day before Yahuwah, saying, cursed the man who shall build that city. He shall lay the foundation of it in his firstborn. and he shall set up the gates of it in his youngest son. And so did Huzan of Bethel. He laid the foundation in Abiram, his firstborn, and set up the gates of it in his youngest surviving son. Yahuwah was with Yahusha, and his name was in all the land. Interesting. Very fitting chapter here.
Mhm.
So, very fitting. So, a lot of cool spiritual connections here with the trumpets and all that. So let's see here. So what I personally liked about a lot of the themes in that chapter was obviously shouting out to Yahuwah. Shua means to, cry out to Yahuwah, to and in certain contexts of scripture can be connected to Yahuwah, crying out for Yahuwah's Yasha, for his salvation. So there was a lot of cool connections here. Obviously, the connection of the 7 trumpets. And by the way, my brother, Yahusha, he actually brought this up to me on Signal tonight, that there's only 2 times in scripture where you see 7 trumpets blown. And it's this story and when Yahusha returns. So I find it very interesting. Obviously, it says at the last trump. That's referring to the 7th trumpet in Revelations. That's exactly when Yahusha returns. So it's very interesting, that connection that our brother Yahusha, he brought up. So now, I think we're going to be going also into, let's see here. See what other scriptures we had. There's a couple out there that we didn't get to read last time. See here. Let me just look at this chart here. Okay, let me just look at this, not chart, but blog here, where I'm getting some of these scriptures from. Okay, so we didn't get to look at Jeremiah 31. Now, just to let you know, guys, I'm probably not going to read from the Septuagint in Jeremiah just because it gets way too confusing with the chapter numberings, and no one's going to be able to follow along with me. That's the only reason. The chapter numberings are really off in the book of Jericho. What I'll do is I'll just read from, let me take the share screen off. I don't have the rest of my apps set up on that phone yet. Okay. Yeah, so let me see here. Let me just read this here. So okay, let me try. I think I'll try the Restore Name King James here. And just want to see what this blog is talking about, a day of remembrance. Okay, so according to that blog, I guess traditionally they consider Yom Taruah a day of remembrance. So this is why we're reading this chapter here. So let's start, I would say verse 1 all the way through. Let me just see. I wonder if I'm wrong about this, if this is the same chapter numberings. No, it's not. Yeah, I'm going to have to use the Masoretic. All right. At that same time, says Yahuwah, will I be the Eluah of all the families of Yashar, and they shall be my people? Let me see something really quick. Yeah, okay. Thus says Yahuwah, the people who were left to the sword found favor in the wilderness. Even Yashar, when I went to cause him to rest, Yahuwah appeared to him from afar. I have loved you with eternal love. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn you. Again will I build you. You shall be built, O Virgin of Yashrael. Again you shall be adorned with your tambourines, and you shall go forth in the dances of those who make merry. Again you shall plant vineyards on the mountains of Samaria, and the planters shall plant and shall enjoy its fruit. For there shall be a day that the watchmen on the hills of Ephraim shall cry, Arise, let us go up to Zion, to Yahuwah our Alua. For thus says Yahuwah, sing with gladness for Yaqub and shout for the chief of the nations. Publish praise and say, for Yahuwah has saved your people, the remnant of Yashrael. What's interesting here too, I just caught this connection. We read right in Joshua 5, Mom, Yahusha is called what? The chief commander.
Right.
It's funny that Jeremiah 31:7 here says, sing with gladness for Jacob, shout out for the chief of the nations. So it's calling Yahuwah chief of the nations here. Publish praise and say, for Yahuwah has saved your people, the remnant of Yasharal. What's interesting, this is something interesting the New Heart English Bible is showing me here. Dead Sea Scrolls here reads saved his people, as well as the LXX. So the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Septuagint agree that it is in past tense, has saved his people. It seems like the Masoretic reads Yahuwah saves by itself. So, and I also see abbreviation here. So DSS, LXX, and TG, which I'm assuming is referring to the Targum of Jeremiah. So 3 different manuscripts agree, should say, saved his people. For some reason, the Masoretic is trying to make it as a present or future tense, which is interesting. Wonder why the difference there. Anyway, look, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the uttermost parts of the earth, along with the blind and the lame, the woman with child and her travails, with child together. A great company shall they return here. Interesting. So that was verse 8 there. So this is all basically talking about the whole history of Yahuwah and his people. And it's basically talking about the scattering, the captivity, and how he's going to bring his people back into the land one day. Look, I will bring them from the north country, gather them from the northern uttermost parts of the earth, along with the blind and the lame, the woman with child and her who travails with child together. A great company shall they return here. So they shall come with weeping, with petitions. I will lead them. I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way, which they shall not stumble. For I am a father of Yashrael, and Ephraim is my firstborn. And again, some interesting little footnotes here. Hear the word of Yahuwah, you nations, declare it in the islands afar off, and say, he who scattered Yashrael will gather him and keep him as a shepherd does his flock. For Yahuwah has ransomed Yaqub and redeemed him from the hand of him who was stronger than he. They shall come and sing in the height of Sion. They shall be radiant over in the goodness of Yahuwah. To the grain and to the new wine and to the oil and to the young of the flock and of the herd, and their soil shall be as a watered garden. They shall not sorrow any more at all. Okay, so I'm just trying to see if there's anything about remembrance in this chapter. Now, I think it kind of switches gears here more about the regathering and all that. So, but there's a good couple of portions here talking about Yahuwah's history and how he's going to save Yashrael and all that. So there was a good couple of 12, 13 verses here that were important. So we're going to move on here because the rest of that chapter is really not pertaining to this topic. So let me just move on here. Yom Teruah as a day of remembrance, Jeremiah 31. We did that. Nehemiah 8, 1-12. Here we go. Now, by the way, this is one of the reasons why a lot of us, even though we can't physically keep this commandment of not being in the land and not being able to gather all together to read the Torah and study the Torah all together in the land, we try our best to memorialize this commandment. That's for the Feast of Trumpets. So I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about here. So Nehemiah 8, 1-12. And the 7th month arrived, and the children of Yasharel in their cities. All the people were gathered as one man to the broad place before the water gate. And they told Ezra, the scribe, to bring the book of the law of Moshe, which Yahuwah commanded Yasharel. So Ezra the priest brought the law before the congregation, both of men, women, and everyone who had understanding, to hearken on the first day of the 7th month. So this is important because this is today, first day of the 7th month. So, and he read in it from the time of sunrise to the middle of the day, before men and women they understood, and the ears of all the people were attentive to the book of the law. And Ezra the scribe stood on the wooden stage, and there stood next to him Matthias, Samias, Ananias, Urias, Chelkiah, Messiah, on his right hand, and his left, Pedaias, Mishael, Melchias, and Asam, Asabadma, Zechariah, and Mesulam. So you got all these different leaders, it seems here. And Ezra opened the book before all the people, for he was above the people, meaning he was like not better than them, but he was standing on a podium. And it came to pass when he had opened it, all the people stood, and Ezra baruched Yahuwah the great Alua, and all the people answered and said, "So be it," lifting up their hands, and they bow down and worship Yahuwah with their face to the ground. And Yahusha, so this is a third Yahusha here. I believe this is the Yahusha from the Babylonian captivity. That's not really mentioned that much. He's mentioned in, I think, only the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, this other Yahusha. I don't think he's the same one in the book of Zechariah. I don't think that's the same one. Benias Sarabias instructed the people in the law, and the people in their place. So this Yahusha does seem to be I guess a priest, because aren't the Levites supposed to be teaching people the law? So yeah. And they read in the book of the law of Alua, and Ezra taught and instructed them distinctly. I like how the Septuagint here in verse 8 says distinctly in the knowledge of Yahuwah, and the people understood in the reading. And Nehemiah and Ezra the priest and scribe and the Levites. So Ezra seems to be of a priest lineage. Ezra, I guess, was a Levite, or at least a priest. That's interesting. And they that instructed the people spoke and said to all the people, "It is a Kadash day to Yahuwah our Alua. Do not mourn nor weep," for all the people wept when they heard the words of the law. And the governor said to them, "Go eat the fat, drink the sweet, and send portions to them that have nothing, for the day is Kadash to our Alua," or should be saying, "For the day is Kadash to Yahuwah, and faint not, for Yahuwah is our strength." So that's the famous verse that we hear a lot of the times traditionally. The joy of Yahuwah is our strength and all that. But this is in the context, mind you, of keeping the Feast of Trumpets. It's all in the context of that. And the Levites caused all the people to be silent, saying, "Be silent for a set apart day and despond not." I guess that means don't mourn or don't grieve. So all the people departed to eat and to drink and to send portions and to make great myrrh, for they understood the words which he made known to them. So you know what's kind of interesting to me? It's like it's almost like Ezra was a type of Messiah. Or who's the one reading from the law? Is it Nehemiah doing that or Ezra? Which one is the actual one standing on a podium?
I thought
Yeah, Ezra. Ezra's the one doing
right.
it. So even though it's called the Book of Nehemiah, again, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. This book was never originally separated. As far as we know, what we call the books of Ezra, the canonical books of Ezra and Nehemiah, were originally one scroll. So that's what's sometimes confusing, not realizing that. So anyway, so that means Ezra is almost operating like a type of Yahushua here, because he's making plain the scriptures to the people. Now, where am I getting this connection from? If you look at the New Testament, Yahushua, right? What does it say in the book of John and all that? It talks about, "You're now speaking to us plainly." It says in multiple places, Yahushua opened their eyes to the scriptures. So Ezra is like a type of Messiah. He's like doing things that Messiah later would do. There's many of these in scripture, type of Messiahs or type of Yahushas in scripture. You have Joseph, you have Moses, Joshua, son of Nun, which we read about earlier. A lot of these guys, Yahuwah chose to show different characteristics of Yahushua. In
Moses too, really.
Well, yeah, I said Moses.
Oh, you just said.
Yeah. Joseph, Moses, Joshua, both Joshua's actually. Joshua, son of Nun, son of Jehozadak, in Zechariah 6. Trying to think who else. Daniel. Yeah, there's certain characteristics in Daniel that are similar to Yahushua. There's tons of, a lot of the patriarchs were used in that way. A lot of them were used that way. Jacob, there's certain characteristics in him. Okay. Even Solomon, I know this is not a popular opinion, but when you read I was just reading this recently. I started the book of the Song of Songs. Okay. When you really read that and you don't take a carnal understanding of it, but you read it in the understanding that it's supposed to basically connect a way a normal man and a wife feel about each other. That book is supposed to parallel how Solomon and his wife feel about one another is how Yahuwah feels about Israel. That's the point. Right. So when you understand that, that means Solomon's being connected to Yahushua, and he's a parallel of Yahushua. If Solomon didn't screw up, he was going to be a foreshadowing of what Messiah would be in the millennium. So that was kind of, and you could see some of that in 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. There's certain characteristics that are the same. You have him riding on a donkey. The only two times we see that in scripture is Solomon and Yahushua. Those are the only two people riding on a donkey as a coronation type of thing. You see what I'm saying? So I personally believe scripture shows us in certain books like that Solomon, if he would have done the right thing, speaking hypotheticals here, if he would have done the right thing, basically he would have been a complete foreshadowing of Yahushua. So anyway, so that's what I got from this chapter here in Nehemiah 8. Obviously, the emphasis of reading the Torah, adhering to the Torah, during this Feast of Trumpets for 6 straight hours. People complain, man, of one service in church, reading the Bible for one little 1 hour service. Imagine reading the Torah for like 6 hours straight.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what's really going on here, because it says from sunrise to about noon. Now, given that the translators would translate it correctly as noon, okay, that's 6 hours straight. Okay, so anyway, so that's something people don't realize. So, but anyway, yeah. Let me just see. I could have swore there's a cross reference for this. For the actual commandment, like this is not just a tradition, this is a commandment for them reading the Torah and studying the Torah on this day, if I'm not mistaken. Let me go to preferences real quick. Sometimes I forget to enable my cross references here. Okay. Man, it's supposed to show them, so that's a little weird that it's not showing anything. Okay. Oh well. But really important, we see even a commandment to send portions that don't have any to. Now, I know some people will probably bring this up and say, well, does that mean we're supposed to go out in our individual cities and go to non-believers? No, I don't think he's saying that. I don't think he's saying that. You got to understand, when they're in the land, who's in the land right now when he's telling them to do this? Israel. There's not sojourners going about when they're coming back from their captivity. Let's be honest here. So we also have to keep the context who he's talking about sending portions to. Can't be ecumenicalizing that. So that's the danger of ecumenicalizing a verse like that, because nowhere is he talking about non-believers. Nowhere is this context of this chapter talking about, oh, go to any random poor person and give food to them. That's not what he's saying. So you got to understand too, when they came back, right, they all came back together. When they came back from the Babylonian captivity, they were all together. There was no one else in the land. There's no reason to believe you had other people in the land. And even if you want to make the argument about the Samaritans, my counter argument would be they're not really Gentiles. So if you want to make the argument, well, the Samaritans are Gentiles, technically they're not. Technically they're not, because they're mixed with Ephraim's bloodline. Technically they're not. So if you want to make the argument, oh, well, they could have been giving, yeah, that's fine. They could be giving food to the Samaritans, yeah, but that doesn't go against my point. My point is that the feasts are only for Israel. They're not supposed to be including the Gentiles in the feasts. We can clearly see this in the Passover. Clearly see that. Yahuwah says, you don't let any uncircumcised person eat of it. And I don't believe that's only talking about physical circumcision, because in Yahuwah's eyes, spiritual circumcision has to come before physical circumcision. So if he says, don't let any uncircumcised person eat of it, I would also look at the spiritual meaning of that. Don't let heathens who worship other mighty ones eat of the Passover. So if he doesn't want them to include non-believers in one feast, why would he want to include them in this feast? So we also got to use common sense here too, because I know it's very easy to look at one isolated verse like that and then take it and run with it. Oh, well, we need to go out and go to the food kitchens or the soup kitchens. That's not what it's talking about. That's not what it's talking about at all. And so anyway, I just wanted to speak on that in verse 12, because I've seen people take a universalist ecumenical understanding to that. So anyway, but anyway, and also just to mention, just because we're on this topic, if you go into the Torah, when Yahuwah talks about feeding the poor of the Gentiles, the majority of the time he's talking about them that are among you. And you can look up that term for yourself. Among you means among Israel. It does not mean every stranger that walks by or a pass-byer. He's not talking about that. He clearly says in you, among you. There's a reason he's using that terminology. So even when we talk about that, number one, they would have to be in the land to do that, because that's where the commandment was commanded to do. He says, you leave your crops, what's left over of your crops, of the poor of the land. He doesn't say to do that when you're in captivity, number one. He doesn't. So we have to always look at things in context. Always have to look at things in context, because if we don't, we're going to be adding to scripture. Okay, so there are cases where Yahuwah tells his people to give to the poor of the nations, but usually it's in a certain context. Either they're in the land of Israel, that they can do that, they can leave their gleanings of their crops, their vineyards for the poor, or it's talking about the poor among them, meaning the poor that are joining, the poor Gentile that is joining Israel, or that's among Israel. So anyway, just thought I would mention that. But anyway, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I just want to point that out there, because I know there's going to be people asking, well, this verse seems to be a universal command. And so it's important to take context with verses like that. Ezra 3:6-7. So now we're looking at Ezra. So Ezra chapter 3, verses 6-7. On the first day of the 7th month, they began to offer burnt offerings to Yahuwah, but the foundation of the house of Yahuwah was not laid. And they gave money to the stone hewers and carpenters, and meat and drink and oil to the Sidonians and Tyrrhenians to bring cedar trees from Lebanon to the Sea of Joppa, according to the grant of Cyrus, king of the Persians, to them. So here we see that it's almost like they're trading. Like this would be like basic, like what would you call this, Mom? Like supply demand type of thing. So they're paying these people to build the temple. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
In verse 7, they're giving money to the stone hewers,
right,
they're
the
carpenters, meat and drink and oil to the Tyrrhenians, the Sidonians, to bring cedar trees. So what we have to understand too is food was economy back then. Yeah. You paid people with food, you paid people with oil, you paid people with wine. So that's what's going on here. To bring cedar trees from Lebanon to the Sea of Joppa, according to the grant of Cyrus, king of Persia, to them. So to help you guys understand what's going on here, this is the rebuilding of Solomon's temple. This is what's going on here. So this would be considered them back in the land, and they're actually hiring people to rebuild the temple. So that's all that's happening here. Psalms 47, verse 5. So, and I'm reading from the Septuagint here. So let's actually, since it's only one verse, let's just start at the first verse here. Psalms 47, verse 1. For the end, a psalm for the sons of Korah. Clap your hands, all you nations. Shout to Eluah with a voice of exaltation. For Yahuwah Most High is terrible, a great king over all the earth. Now, terrible is like being used in this context of like he's to be feared, to dread, to fear. So it's not being used in a negative connotation. We think of the word terrible and we get like this big meanie in the sky, false understanding. Terrible or dreadful in this context is talking about to be feared. We are to tremble in his presence. That's what it's talking about. He has subdued the peoples under us and nations under our feet. Now that goes back to the whole Adam thing. Okay. He has chosen his inheritance for us, the beauty of Yaqub, which he loved. Alua has gone up with a shout. Yahuwah with a sound of a trumpet. Now, the reason this is important is actually most people will kind of just read over this. This is a oneness verse here. If you go to the New Testament, who is returning with a shout and with the sound of a trumpet? Yahusha, right? 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. So this verse is connecting Yahuwah to Yahusha here. So, all right. So verse 6, sing praises to our Alua, sing praises to our King, sing praises. For Alua is king of all the earth, sing praises with understanding. Alua reigns over the nations. Alua sits upon the throne of his set apartness. The rulers of the people are assembled with the Alua of Abraham, for Alua's mighty ones of the earth have been greatly exalted. Now, I wonder if this is talking about the divine council, because it says the rulers of the nations or the people are gathered with Yahuwah. Now, this seems similar to Psalms 82. You know what I'm talking about, Mom?
Mm-hmm.
He judges the mighty ones. He is in the assembly of the mighty ones. So this is why it's important to understand the divine council, because believe it or not, it's all over the Bible. It's you even here it seems to be alluding to Yahuwah and his messengers up there in heaven, where Yahuwah is in, the center, the mighty one of mighty ones. Yahuwah's above the other mighty ones, but there are technically other mighty ones, lesser mighty ones. Elohim with a small a, okay? And that seems to be what Psalms 47:9 is saying there. Does yours read like that? The rulers of the people are assembled with the mighty one of Abraham?
Yeah, the nobles of the nations assemble as the people of the Elohim of Abraham. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So very interesting. So moving on here. All right, so we read that verse last time. Let's do Psalms 100. You okay, Mom?
Yeah.
Sorry. A psalm of thanksgiving. So I'm at Psalms 100 here, verse 1. So psalm of thanksgiving. Make a joyful noise to Yahuwah, all the earth. Serve with gladness. Come before his presence with exultation. Know that Yahuwah, he is Alua. He made us, and not we ourselves, his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and courts with hymns. Give thanks to him, praise his name. For Yahuwah is true, his mercy is forever, and his truth to generation and generation. Now, I think the Hebrew there would say eternity to eternity. I think something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, generations. Okay. Well, that's about it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this study. Like I said, I hope all of you are having a great Feast of Trumpets. Remember to blow the trumpets. Whatever you have, try your best. After Shabbat, Yahuwah willing, after Shabbat, that I remember to do this. I'm going to give you guys a couple links. Those of you that have been convicted to actually get some real silver trumpets out there. After Shabbat, after the high Shabbat's over, I would like to put some links for you guys just to make sure. that you guys have some options for next year. I know a lot of us that we first come in, we try our best to keep this feast as best to our abilities. So I'm not going to try to, self-righteously judge you guys. I understand you guys come from, whatever background you come into this walk, people are telling you, oh, you need to get a ram's horn. You need to get a ram's horn. If this is something new to you guys about using a trumpet instead of a ram's horn, I recommend you check out the study we did a while ago called trumpet/cornet versus ram's horn. But anyway, after Shabbat, Yahuwah willing, after Shabbat, I'll give you guys links just in case any of our brothers and sisters out there are interested in getting a silver trumpet. So, but thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed this study, and I hope you guys got some edification out of it. Shabbat Shalom, all of our brothers and sisters out there. Have a great feast season. Chag Samak, Rosh Kadash, which means have a joyful new moon. Have a joyful Shabbat. And have a joyful Yom Taruah. See you guys next time, Yahuwah willing. Shalom.